We're here, first and foremost, to confirm that the peaceful protests planned for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week are on as earlier declared by our leadership. These protests will go on in line with Article 37 of our Constitution, which provides for freedom of peaceful assembly and states that every person has a right peacefully and unarmed to assemble and demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. We confirm that the signature collection is also going on and will proceed side by side with the protests. The exercise of signature collection is also protected by Article 1 of the Constitution, which provides that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. In this instance, the people have decided to act directly. Who are we to go against the wishes of the people? Having said this, we wish to set the record straight on a couple of things that the Kenya Kwanza government got wrong last week in response to the ongoing protests. The Kenya Kwanza claimed that the protests are being paid for. For anyone to claim that those protesters who came out in their hundreds and thousands in places like Emali, Busia, Kitale, Kilifi, Kisii, Kakamega, Machakos, and Nairobi, among other places, were being paid is to be extremely insincere and to live in deep denial. And that should worry Kenyans. A regime in denial and deep slumber is a very, very dangerous regime, and Kenya Kwanza is one such regime. We are shocked at how fast Kenya Kwanza has lost contact with the people and how they don't understand what Kenyans are going through. Kenya Kwanza claims that these protests are not about the cost of living. In Kenya Kwanza's view, the cost of living is not so high as to warrant the protests. This is how a regime that has abandoned the people's agenda thinks, and Kenya Kwanza is one such regime. Kenya Kwanza does not know how angry and hungry the Kenyans are. Like a broken record, Kenya Kwanza is stuck. It is stuck in the 2018 handshake and the 2008 power sharing deal. We ask Kenya Kwanza to wake up and move on, past the handshake and the nusu mkate. Kenyans have moved on. Because of its lack of imagination, Kenya Kwanza is the only political formation still thinking and talking about the handshake. No wonder the regime has lost the people. Kenya Kwanza is accusing Azimio of failing to provide solutions to the rising cost of living. We know no country in the world where a party stays in government but wants those out of government to provide solutions to the problems of the people. If Kenya Kwanza's solutions are not working for the people, then Kenya Kwanza needs to get out of power, disband, and quit. Across the world, responsible leaders and regimes admit failure of their policies and quit in the interest of the nation. In their address last weekend, Kenya Kwanza purported to call the attention of the nation to efforts by the government to reduce the cost of living, despite having taken over our economy at rock bottom. But they could not point to any such efforts. If there is an effort to lower the cost of living, Kenyans will notice it, and Kenya Kwanza will not need to explain itself. The truth is, there are no such efforts to lower the cost of living. How can the raising of taxes on fuel from 8 to 16% be classified as an effort to lower the cost of living? Kenya Kwanza is telling us that the government has hired 55,000 teachers. So what? It is not a favor. They are supposed to hire teachers. It is part of their job. But they are missing the point here. People eat food, and people want food. Even the teachers are crying about the cost of even those teachers are crying about the cost of food, high taxes, and lower salaries. Hiring teachers does not reduce the cost of living. What is the point of hiring a teacher and then taking away their entire salary through taxes? What is the point? What is the point of hiring workers and then turning them into slaves? We encourage Kenya Kwanza to move past the generalities of constantly reminding Kenyans that Kenya Kwanza is a legitimately elected government. People want food. People do not eat the government, legitimate or illegitimate. It does not matter. The legitimacy or credibility of any government is seen in the way it governs and treats its people. If a regime is a failure, like the Kenya Kwanza one is, it does not matter how legitimate or otherwise it is. A failure is still a failure. People want food. Kenya Kwanza is talking about generalities like the Hustler Fund, and they plan to roll out the next phase. Kenya has never had a shortage of funds like the Youth Fund, the Women Fund, etc. People do not eat funds. People eat food. People don't eat in phases. People eat today and every day. Don't go telling Kenyans about the Hustler Fund and its next phase. Tell Kenyans how food will be affordable now and today. Kenya Kwanza is telling hungry Kenyans that it has reduced the budget deficit by 500 billion shillings. What exactly is that? Is there food in Kenya called the budget deficit? Who eats the budget deficit? We do not understand Kenya Kwanza's obsession with seeing and doing what Kenyans have not asked for. As far as we know, Kenyans have never asked for funds to be launched. Kenyans have specifically asked for the cost of goods to come down and taxes to be reduced. But Kenya Kwanza is only talking about the deficit and funds. We have seen Kenya Kwanza resorting to tired and bigoted phrases like "lot of violence." It will not work this time. People do not really care. All that the people want is food and a decent standard of living. If Kenya Kwanza has a prince of peace who can't provide food, no amount of character assassination of his challenger will sway the Kenyans. People want food. That's it. We have seen Kenya Kwanza purport to be sharing with Kenyans the Right Honorable Raila Odinga's political history. How ridiculous can they really get? We now challenge the same MPs to share with us the political history of William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua from 1990 to date. They started it, so let them go the full length. We take note that the Kenya Kwanza MPs have threatened to mobilize their supporters to counter the protesters, whom they believe are supporters of Azimio. Again, Kenya Kwanza is missing the point here and getting it wrong, as usual. The thousands of Kenyans turning up for these protesters are not just Azimio supporters. These are Kenyans from across all political and non-political formations who have been brought together by suffering. The protesters are from Azimio, Ford Kenya, ANC, and even Kenya Kwanza. People realize that they don't eat the government. People eat food, and people want food. People realize that having voted for a party or a president does not put food on their table. All the same, we welcome the Kenya Kwanza MPs to the protest on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. If they come with violence and murder, Kenya Kwanza supporters will be among the victims. We take note that the Kenya Kwanza MPs have resolved to cooperate with the police and ensure that there is no further loss of life and livelihood. We know what that means. It means confronting the protesters with members of that killer squad called the Operations Support Unit, whose brief is to maim and kill protesters, including Azimio leaders. In this regard, we take great exception to the continued threats to the life of our leader, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, as propagated by senior leaders of the Kenya Kwanza regime. There will be a price to pay for those threats. We are shocked that Kenya Kwanza is talking about those who orchestrate and plan and finance violence and occasion mass displacement of civilian populations and businesses deemed to be owned by people from other communities. That sounds like Kenya Kwanza. The sponsors of the greatest violence and murder and displacements in Kenya's history are actually Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza MPs need to know the history of the leaders of their party. The men and women who have sponsored violence and evicted communities and taken over their land and businesses are actually in Kenya Kwanza. It is clear that the Kenya Kwanza is struggling on all fronts. We call on all Kenyans to wake up to the reality that we are on our own and we have to fight for ourselves. In this regard, we acknowledge the motorists for their participation in the last protests and encourage them to continue staying off the road on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in solidarity with the rest of the Kenyans. Let's meet on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and do this again. Thank you.